I was just straightening up my knees to try to pull myself up over this ledge, and I heard this thing that I never heard before, but I knew exactly what it was. It was a rattler. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Zapp Savvy, the podcast that electrifies the world, your world, with energy solutions.
Okay, let's retake that.
Okay. 3, 2. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Zapp Savvy, the podcast that electrifies your world with energy solutions.
That's right. We're back for another episode. I'm Mike Sokol.
And I'm Doug Curtis, and we're your hosts.
Okay, I think it's time for our favorite outdoor adventure stories. Okay, Doug, you're on, man. What do you like?
Well, actually, this is part 1, and in the next episode, I'll tell you about part 2. But part 1 is, it's the early 50s. I'm about 10 years old, and we have a lot of trees in our backyard. And my dad, he had a World War II jungle hammock, which meant that you had a regular canvas hammock, and then you had mosquito netting, and then you had, like, we would have in a regular tent a fly, but it was all one thing, and you hung it up between 2 trees in the backyard, and then you made the screens work right, and you got the roof so the water, and it had a zipper, and you climbed into it, and you could sleep in a jungle hammock in the backyard. And that's my part 1 story. Stay tuned for part 2.
Okay, so you get to pick. So should I talk about when I almost died my dad almost drove the Rambler off the little road going up to Pikes Peak, or when I got to drive into Canada on the Gaspé Peninsula and helped man walk on the moon? Which one do you want first?
I think I gotta go for danger.
Danger. Okay, danger. Okay, so here's the deal. Rambler station wagon with a bumper hitch on it, little Cox pop-up camper, and we're driving out by, Pikes Peak. And so we had camped somewhere down the campground, and we decided that my dad decided he wanted to go up the little windy road up to this thing, not realizing just how terrified my mother was of heights. So we get halfway up. This is us 3 kids. I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. We're in the back of the Rambler station wagon. Dad's driving up there. We get halfway up. Mom is crying and sobbing and shaking and says, "Joe, you've got to turn around." And this is a little 1-lane road, and there's no guardrail on this thing. Dad keeps going till he finds a tiny, tiny little wider spot for turnaround. He's backing the Rambler up, and he's asking us kids to tell us when the wheels are going to fall off and then we're all going to plummet to earth. This is a lot of responsibility for like a 9-year-old kid, right? So obviously we survived. Dad got the thing nosed around and turned around. He said it was because he was a driver's ed instructor. He was able to do this. We got down the hill. Mom said, no more trips up big mountains anymore. So after that, we tried to camp more in flatter areas.
Okay. Good story. But Mike, I know you've been getting a lot of really great questions about lithium batteries. And it feels like we're always bringing these up, but the questions from people are really endless.
Yes, I'm constantly getting questions about these things. And so today I thought it was an amazing opportunity to bring on a guest who's the industry expert on the topic of lithium battery charging. He's from Progressive Dynamics, and Dennis Wieske is joining us today. Hey, Dennis, how are you?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your background in lithium battery charging.
Okay, so I've been working with Progressive Dynamics for about 8 years now, and as I started out, I saw more and more people being interested in the lithium batteries as they were slowly getting into the industry. So I started doing a lot of research because I get questions all day long. I work in the service department here at PDI. I answer phone calls all day long, anywhere from 30 to 60 calls a day. And the trend that I've noticed over time is that 7 years ago, we'd get maybe 1 or 2 calls a week. Now we get 5 or 6 calls a day, all related to people wanting to upgrade to lithium batteries. Mike and I have gone over this before. People would buy their batteries and be told by the sellers that, oh, just throw it in there and it'll all work. Well, I didn't like that, and so I just dug into lithium batteries, charging, what we can do at our end here, what workarounds we might have for customers so that they can properly charge their battery.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. So, what we're going to do here, we've gathered up about 12 questions, I believe, Q&As just from our background. We're not going to be able to answer all of these questions in this one Zapp Savvy podcast. So guess what? This is going to be a two-parter. So we're going to get through half a dozen or so of these today, and then stay tuned next month. We'll fill in the rest of them. What do you think, Doug? Are we ready to go?
Yeah, I wonder, Mike, if, we just might sort of paint the picture really quickly because, there is so many things to talk about when you talk about even battery types and then how different are the battery types. I mean, should we maybe, as we get further into this, we could populate maybe some bullets on the screen listing where we're going, or we're just going to go into the darkness and be guided by the light of Dennis and you.
Of lithium powered LEDs. We actually have a plan here, which they'll put up on the screen for you.
Okay.
And again, this is both Dennis and I, we're immersed in this. He's doing it directly from a help desk thing. I have 10,000 reads a day on my daily Substack. And I got to tell you, a big percentage of them is about charging batteries, types of batteries, filling batteries. I just did one yesterday about somebody blew up their flooded lead acid battery because they just left it charging apparently for months without checking water, little things like that. And again, lithium batteries used to be kind of just very rare kind of thing. Now that the price is dropping, many of the manufacturers are beginning to put them in as OEM or maybe perhaps as an upgrade that you can get. But not a lot of people understand what lithium batteries are. So I thought we would go down this list, and Dennis and I can talk about the bits and pieces of this, and we'll put some screenshots up for you.
Great.
Okay, so what do you think? Is that a good plan?
Great plan.
Okay, Dennis, let's talk first a little bit about the history of flooded lead acid batteries. They've been around for a while, haven't they?
Over 100 years. So they haven't really changed very much. The materials have changed. Some of the chemical composition has changed, but they still operate the same way. You have a electrolytic solution, you have some plates, and chemical reactions take place that provide your electricity. You kind of reverse that process and charge the batteries as well so they can store the energy as well. They do contain a liquid. The liquid can boil off, evaporate, gas out. So it's very important on a flooded lead acid battery that you regularly check the water levels, keep the battery charged. You run into a whole bunch of difficulties if you keep your battery undercharged. They will sulfate, and when they sulfate, you end up destroying the plates, and then you lose the effectiveness of the battery.
One of the things that I've noticed, which I wrote about yesterday in my daily newsletter, if you allow them to be on even a trickle charger for weeks at a time, eventually you can boil enough electrolyte out. And now what happens is they start outgassing hydrogen and oxygen gas in the exact 2-to-1 ratio needed to make a perfect explosion. And then all it takes is, it gets down low enough, there can be a little arc between the plates, and it goes boom, and it blows the top of the battery off and blows basically sulfuric acid all over the place. It's a mess. So
it's a big mess.
It's a horrible mess. So leaving a flooded lead acid battery on a trickle charger constantly is a bad thing. And I tell people to check the electrolyte level and add distilled water. You need to check this at least once a month if you're actively using this stuff. There you go. So that's what we know. That's your basics on flooded lead acid batteries. So Dennis, absorbed glass mat, AGM batteries, how are they
So
different?
this was a technology that was developed for the military, actually, back in the 70s. So rather than having a whole bunch of liquid floating around in the battery, there's a glass material that absorbs the electrolyte, and that is placed in between the plates. So you don't have a battery that you have to put water in. In fact, you can't. They are sealed. They are regulated valves, so when they do, for some reason, want to release gas, they can do that. But as far as trying to replenish distilled water, it's not going to happen. They charge a little bit differently, but most will operate well off of a standard flooded lead acid charger.
And the other thing that I've noted with going back to flooded lead acid batteries, because they outgas, well, they produce a lot of gas all the time. You really don't want to have them in a living compartment. I mean, they need to be in their own vented place, so that, yeah, you're not going to stick this under your bed. Absorbed glass mat, if they are starting to vent, something's going wrong. I've seen people overcharging them, which can cause, and they can get hot enough to start outgassing through their little vent controls on them. But absorbed glass mat, they can live on their sides, they can live upside down. That's one of the advantages. Flooded lead acid batteries have to be oriented with the caps on top. Absorbed glass mats, I've seen them put them in a variety of ways. Okay, so now the star of the show here today, lithium iron phosphate batteries. Let's talk a little bit about what they are and some of the advantages of that. So take it away, Dennis. What do we know about lithium iron phosphate batteries?
Okay, so there are a lot of varieties of lithium batteries out there, and people have heard the horror stories of their cell phones and their laptop computers igniting for apparently no reason. The lithium iron phosphate battery has a little different chemistry, and so the oxygen atoms that are actually being used in the battery are bonded within the structure. So it's not free oxygen. So even if they get hot, they're not going to flame out like you would see in some of the other type of lithium batteries. They charge very fast, pretty much as you can give it. Most of the battery manufacturers will install a battery management system in the battery. Its sole purpose in life is to protect the cells of the battery. So it regulates charging, discharging, and does whatever it needs to do to maintain proper operation of the cells within the battery.
And one of the other things the BMS does is not only regulates the amount of charge going in and also limits the amount of current supplied, it also should be able to limit the charging current if the temperatures go down real low. You cannot charge a lithium iron phosphate cell once it gets down, below 32 degrees?
32 degrees. Battleborn has done a video on that actually. What happens though is the cold temperature does not allow the even flow, the chemistry between changing the anode and the cathode and vice versa. And so when you do that, you end up damaging any barriers between those, and that will destroy the cell. So a quality made lithium iron phosphate battery will have built-in protection to prohibit charging if the battery is at 32 degrees below or below.
Right. And a number of the batteries that I'm working with now have built-in heaters, or you can get a blanket on it. So one of the jobs of the BMS is not to charge the cells, but turn on the heater, as it were, until it gets it up to temp. And then it can begin charging the cells, which is also a good reason why your lithium batteries would like to be in the living compartment where you can have heat as opposed to out on the tongue of your trailer. Because if it's out there and it's cold out and you don't have a heater in it, you can't charge those things all winter. You've got to bring the batteries into a room to get them up to temp to charge them. A lot of people don't realize you could just kind of get yourself between a rock and a hard place unless you've got.
That brings up another point, Mike. The flooded and absorbed glass batteries have a tendency to bleed off internally due to the chemistry in the battery. Physics are involved here, way beyond what I understand, but they will discharge. However, on a lithium battery, once you charge it up, that's it. It will hold that charge for an extended period of time. I did an experiment, fully charged the battery, let it sit on the floor, disconnected, and when I came back 8 months later, it still had 98% charge left in the battery. So you don't have to worry about keeping that battery charged while you're in storage. Disconnect the battery, it will hold its charge. So that's a huge advantage over any of the lead type batteries.
Right. Lead acid batteries, I've seen discharge anywhere between 5 and 10% of state of charge per month. So, you could lose 50, 60% of your charge in just a few months while it's, waiting in your RV. The lithiums that I've tested lose way less than 1% per month. I did one. I think I came back to it after a year. I started, I think, at 95% state of charge, and I was down to like 87%. So I lost like 7%, 6% maybe in 12, 14 months. And my wife noticed she's got one of these cute little Barbie chainsaws, these little handheld ones, with lithium batteries that you pop in there. She goes, I haven't charged this up since last fall, and I'm out cutting stuff right now, and it's got a full charge. Because she's used to the old idea of, NiCad batteries or whatever, they would lose a tremendous amount. So now I will note that if you have a new Airstream trailer with lithium batteries in it, and you push the little battery disconnect button on the door, the green button, and I just saw this at the Airstream show a couple of months ago. When you push that, it does not disconnect the battery. They tell you that it does, but it still leaves like your smoke detector and your propane gas detector running. So what Airstream tells you is you need to bring the batteries inside, or you need to put a trickle charger on it every month, because the battery will discharge in a month. It's not the fault of the lithium batteries. It's the fact that the Airstream button does not actually disconnect the batteries. So I've told them all you've got to do is pop the negative terminal off. You don't need to bring the batteries in. Lithium batteries will store perfectly fine in sub-zero temperatures. They just don't care. But you can't be constantly discharging them for your smoke detector and everything inside of your RV, or they will die in a month.
And Airstream isn't alone in that. Many of the manufacturers will have your sensors tied directly to the battery. So when you're sitting there, even if you turn your disconnect switch off, those propane detectors are still operating. And also your braking system. So there are things wired directly to the battery and not to the DC distribution panel. So Mike's right, if you disconnect the negative lead, that will completely isolate the battery. Then it shouldn't discharge anything more than a few percent over your storage period.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And let's talk. Let's go to your next. I got my next question here, and I've got people that swear by 6-volt, deep cycle batteries, flooded lead acid, and they say, how come are they better than the 12-volt ones? And I think I understand this. Dennis, do you know any difference between 6-volt deep cycle batteries and 12-volt, flooded lead acid batteries?
So basically you have 3 levels of batteries to begin with. So you have your starter battery lights. That's the one you find under the hood in your car. It really has very little storage capability. However, it does crank out a lot of amps to get that engine started. Then you have a level 2 battery, a marine RV battery, which still have high cranking amps, but they also have increased storage. So you may be getting up to 70, 100, 105 storage amps. When you start getting down into the deep cycle battery, they do not have as high of cranking amp capability. However, they do have a larger storage capability. So, and along with the lithium iron phosphate batteries, they also have tremendous storage capability, but they actually have even a more limited cranking amp capability.
What we found is I found a couple of people that wanted to they actually replaced the AGM starter batteries on their diesel pushers and with lithium, and they found that they couldn't start the engine with it. So they added these super capacitors. It looks like a big battery, but it's a big honking capacitor bank just to give you that 400 or 500 amperes of current for a second that you need to spin up your diesel engine. So lithium batteries don't belong in starter positions generally, unless you are willing to do a whole bunch of extra voodoo to make it work. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, one thing that I've noticed, I've told people, if you're going to go get a 12-volt battery for your RV, and if they list cold cranking amps, if it says CCA on it, guess what? That's not a deep cycle battery. That's one of these combination batteries kind of a thing. Or if you get just one that you would put in your car, as Dennis noted, that would be, you would not have a good time with that. It's going to not be able to have as many discharge cycles as you would like. Also remember that in AGM batteries or flooded lead acid batteries, all the manufacturers recommend that you do not discharge them down below 50% state of charge a bunch of times because that shortens the life. But virtually every lithium battery manufacturer that I'm working with now, they say that you can take this from 100% state of charge down to 0%. And basically they just shut the BMS shuts it off and protects the cells inside of it. So you basically have twice the amount of available amperage, or I should say watt hours, I'm sorry, from a lithium battery compared to a flooded lead acid or an AGM battery. So, and it's a lot lighter in weight. Oh, can I tell you my brief story about how many batteries it would take to replace a 5-gallon tank of propane? Because I have people ask me about energy all the time.
Please.
So one of my buddies asked me this, and I was running through the numbers in my head, and I said, I think a regular 20-pound tank of propane has the equivalent of approximately 100 amp hour batteries. Now, I'm not talking about efficiency stuff. I'm just talking about pure energy storage. And I looked it up later and I did the calculations and I was wrong. It's actually 101 batteries. And so the weight of that's somewhere around 3,000 pounds worth of lithium batteries. And if you did it with flooded lead acid, because you could only take them down to 50% and they're a lot heavier and you need more of them, I think it was like 14,000 pounds of lead acid battery in terms of energy storage. So we are nowhere near where Star Trek phasers had those little battery things that could, power your city for weeks. No. You still have to be a little careful with how much energy you use. But isn't that fun? A fun fact, a geek fact.
Great fact.
Okay. So now let's look at how different they are. Okay, so Dennis, now we're in the how different they are. Okay. Many manufacturers advertise their lithium batteries as a drop-in upgrade. Is that really true?
No, it's not. There's a number of differences with the lithium battery versus a lead acid battery. So part of it is, and the big part of it is the charging voltage required to charge a lithium battery. It is more related to a bulk charge or a rapid charge on a lead acid battery. You're looking at 14.4 is now the current industry standard. Although I have to say here, there is no industry standard. So the standard I'm going by is what the average recommendation is from all those battery sellers that are on Amazon and some of the other sites. Originally, when the lithium battery came out, the ideal charging voltage is 14.6 volts for the cells that are in the battery. I don't know what the particular reason is, but the industry seems to have lowered that recommended voltage down to 14.4. We have done that with our products, and across the line, any new product you get from us will be charging at 14.4, not the old standard of 14.6. They also charge rapidly. And so what I mean by that is with a flooded or lead acid battery, generally when you're charging 3 to 5 amps. On a really low battery, maybe 10, 15. So even though you have a 60 amp charger, you're really not throwing that 60 amps into the battery. You're putting much less. And all the older rigs were all wired with ideal wiring for that type of situation. However, with the lithium battery can absorb actually greater than its storage capacity. So a 100 amp hour battery theoretically could take in 200 amps and fully charge that battery in a half hour. Now, most of the battery manufacturers have limited that to, rather than 2C, 2C would be the equivalent of 2 times the charge value of the battery. So they recommend maybe half. So on a 100 amp hour battery, you would charge at about 50 amps. That battery will absorb that right away. So that brings up a new problem that didn't occur in the RVs before because of that slow charge rate, is the fact that wire has resistance. And as you increase the current through the wire, the voltage drop across that wire increases. What that means is that you may have 14.4 volts at your charger. You may end up only with 13.4 volts at your battery. You're losing that voltage. And when you have that lower charging voltage at the battery, it actually will reduce the rate of charge. So instead of charging at 60 amps, you might only charge at 20, 30 amps, not really utilizing the positive characteristics of the battery. You're cutting it in half. Now, for some people, that's fine. If you decide you don't want to mess with lead acid batteries anymore, and you're always plugged in when you go camping, then so it takes extra time to charge those batteries, really doesn't matter. Boondocking, however, when you want to run that generator for a couple hours and put put 100 amps or more into that battery, well then you need efficient wiring. So we've done a lot of testing here at Progressive Dynamics and have determined that about 2% loss between the charger and the battery itself is going to be your most efficient charging. 1% is not going to gain you anything. 5% will reduce your rate of charge. So testing we've done, about 2% loss between the battery and the converter is going to give you optimal charging. Now, there's other things that can play into that. You have other devices, you have connections, you have disconnect switches, you have circuit breakers. You can lose a little bit of voltage across all those devices. So you may not get that full 60 amps, but you should get above 50, 55, and maybe even you will get that 60 amps. All depends on the loss between the battery and the converter.
So the other thing that I note on my own GeoPro trailer, I have a 400 amp hour Master Volt battery and their what they call Combi Master charger. You know, it's a hybrid inverter. It wants to charge that battery like at 260 amps. I mean, and what it does then is it wants to draw 26, 28 amps from the 30 amp shore power cord going in, which makes it impossible to charge this off of, say, a 2000 watt Honda generator, because that's only good for maybe 17, 18 amps continuous. But the Combi Master has the ability to dumb down the amount of charging that it will take. So I can limit the input current to 10 or 15 amps AC, which works out to, 100, 150 amps of charge. So I can slow it down there. And I think there's a couple of batteries that people have told me about. I don't have one, that you can go in with a Bluetooth phone app and I guess set the maximum charging current for that lithium battery. Have you seen any of those, Dennis?
I haven't seen or heard of that. I will say this though, if you are using a generator to charge your battery, especially the inverter generators are really popular right now. You can throw it in the back of your truck, in your trunk, whatever, and it's very lightweight. They tend to be quieter. However, if you're using a 60 amp charger or less, we do recommend a 2,000 watt generator minimum. That's usually 1,800 running watts. If you go to a 75, 80 amp charger, then you may need to have a 3,000 watt generator. There's other factors that are involved, including efficiency, power correction, and so forth. So when you try to, and we have a lot of customers do that, well, this is a 2,000 watt generator, and I've added this, this, and this, and I'm still less than 2,000 watts. I'm only at 1,950 watts. Well, you've discarded all the inefficiencies that you also have to account for. And so generally the recommendation is if you have a 2,000 watt generator, you want to keep that wattage under 75%. And that tends to work. Some people will stick around 2/3 or 66%. Then you're not overtaxing your generator. You're still efficiently charging your batteries. You have to match the equipment and you have to allow for the inefficiencies that are inherent in everything.
So if you already have a converter that has a lithium setting, is your lithium battery, could it be drop in? And how do you set this? Do these converters automatically know it's a lithium? Do you have to flip a switch? What do you do?
So there have been companies that have tried automatic detecting of a lithium battery. However, the biggest thing I think the battery manufacturers and a lot of users don't realize is that that converter has two jobs. Number one, it runs a 12-volt system in your RV, and it will charge your battery. Simultaneously, one output does both together. So when you're trying to detect a lithium battery, you also have other things in the RV that are actually skewing what could be determined to be a lithium or lead acid battery. So we chose not to use automatic detect. A number of our products have a manual setting to switch from lithium to, or generally flooded to lithium. Factory defaults are generally flooded. We do have lithium only chargers. However, we are phasing out of that. We've actually developed a new charger that has 3 different charging profiles in it. You manually select your battery type. Once you select your battery type, it is stored in memory. So anytime you power up, power down, power up, it will always be in the same mode you left it. So we have a flooded lead acid charging, which is our standard charge wizard that's been around for decades now. We've added a lithium profile, increases the voltages and handles the charging a little differently to optimize the benefits of the AGM battery. And we also have a 2-stage lithium charging profile. And of course, we go back to our single old-fashioned charger, which was just 1 voltage. We also have that option too. We have many people that use these not in the RV, but need a steady output voltage. So we provide all 4 options in one product. Currently, they're only deck mount. We are in process of adding that to all our power centers. Once we do that, we will have a full transition into multi-battery selection with multiple charging profiles. The other advantage that we have is we have options for manually controlling our chargers. So if you are using our existing 9200 or the standard flooded cell charging, we have a remote pendant which allows you to manually change your charge mode. Found out for the boondockers, this was extremely beneficial. Most campsites allow 2 hours charging on a generator. So if you can only run generator for 2 hours and you're charging at 3 to 5 amps or 10 amps, that's not putting a lot of power back to the battery in that 2 hours. However, if you go into a rapid or boost charge, bulk charge, you can actually triple that rate of charge. So in that short charge time, you've definitely increased the charge capability. That manual control or manual override will be available on all our profiles. They currently are on everything but our single stage charger. So for people that have the standard lead acid charger using a remote pendant, we can actually achieve that 14.4 volts for charging a lithium battery. So often people will purchase their battery first and then start asking questions. To me, that's the wrong way of doing it. Ask the questions, and then you can go ahead and get the proper equipment at the time you want to. But by being able to manually control our charge wizard, that gives you the option or the comfort of being able to fully charge your batteries. There are limitations, but it is a workaround until you get a proper lithium charger. So by being able to use our charge wizard, go into bulk mode, you will have 4 hours of charging for your lithium battery. In most cases, a single or double battery, 100, 200 amp hours, that's going to work fine. The only bad thing about that is that you will have to put it into charge mode whenever you want to put on a charge on the battery. So for people that plug in all the time, they may want to, the night before, plug in. Of course, they have to get their refrigerator cooled down anyways, put the unit into boost mode. When you leave in the morning, you have a fully charged battery to get you through to your destination. You get to your campsite, you have power to run your slides, your lifts, and at the same token, the charger will revert back to the normal voltages to operate the RV while you're plugged in. The night before you're going to leave, charge it up again. You hit the road, you have a fully charged battery. Yes, it takes a little more involvement. It's not completely automatic, but it is a workaround until you get to an automatic lithium charger.
Okay, so Dennis, let's go ahead and do some 10-second answers. So a
Okay.
quick response, shoot from the hip, as it were, for some Q&As from part one. So are lithium batteries safe from catching on fire?
Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
Remember, lithium batteries that you have in your phone or computer were lithium ion batteries, whereas lithium batteries that you have in your RV are lithium iron phosphate. So lithium iron phosphate does not have that same avalanche catch on fire kind of thing that your lithium ions do. Okay, can they be charged or discharged in cold temperatures?
So charging in cold temperatures, we're limited to 32 degrees or warmer. And like was mentioned, a lot of battery manufacturers are now including internal heaters that will only work, they're temperature controlled. So once the temperature reaches their programmed threshold, they will start keeping those cells warm. They will provide power in lower temperatures. It's the charging capability that's really, really critical.
Right. I've seen some of them say they can provide power 10, 20, 30 degrees below zero, but charging them is the tricky part. Okay.
Correct.
Do they really need to have a lithium rated charger converter, or what happens if they just use their standard lead acid charger converter on a lithium battery?
So if you're charging at the standard 13.6 voltage output of most average converters, which is considered a slow charge for a lead acid battery, you will charge to about 80%, and that's going to be it. It'll also be a very slow charge, maybe 8 times as long as it would take if you were charging at 14.4 volts.
Right. So it works, but you're not getting a lot of the advantages, and you're throwing away at least 20% of the capacity that you would have had that you're paying for.
Correct.
Is there a lithium upgrade kit for existing load centers? Can you have a drop-in module?
So on our power centers, we are working on making multi-stage lithium available. Right now, all of our power centers do have an option for charging at 14.4 as a single stage. That brings its own questions, but they do have that capability. Our deck mount chargers, our PD 9300 series is now multi-battery, so you will have those full options to switch any type of battery.
And finally, for this, how many charge discharge cycles? I mean, these are expensive. How many times can I plan for these things to be charged and discharged?
So the lithium iron phosphate battery has about 10 times the cycle rate of a standard lead acid battery. So whereas a standard lead acid battery may give you 300 to 500 cycles, you're looking at 3,000 to 5,000 for a lithium battery.
And that's what I've heard too. And I've been cycling. I've got batteries here that I've been cycling on up and down hundreds and hundreds of times, and they have not lost any capacity. Okay, I think that we've got enough stuff for episode 1, Dennis. And we're going to see you in episode 2, where we're going to carry on with even more questions. What do you think, Doug?
That I'm so grateful, Dennis. I mean, that was fantastic. I'm sure for our listeners, they may need a little more decoding because there was so information. I mean, I'm not sure how we can, even simplify, maybe create, some tools that might be an afterward download for somebody because they might want more information because so jam packed. I mean, wow, way over the average RVer head. Even though you guys are translating, I can't remember it all, but I'm grateful for today. Thank you so much.
Well,
I know
Doug,
we're
we have on our website, if you go to the menu bar at the very top of the page, we have a line item called Upgrade to Lithium.
Oh,
With that, we discuss the initial issue that Mike and I started working on was the fact that the battery sellers are saying, oh, well, you just take this battery, replace it. And so we discussed the pros and cons of the lithium battery, the advantages and the disadvantages. We also have on that website a YouTube video that Mike and I coordinated on.
oh,
And it discusses in a little more detail a lot of the stuff, the discussion that we had today.
okay.
So we also have some other information relating to lithium, and on our website there is a lot of information on the charging profiles and everything else. So we are doing our best to keep that information available to everyone. It takes time to digest this. And sometimes you have to go back and, okay, now I understand this. Let me look at this aspect.
Right.
And then say, okay, well, let me review this. Oh, okay, now I get it. It is not simple.
Okay.
But if you do your homework, it's not that difficult either.
We are going to take those resources, if you permit us, Dennis, and attach that to the bottom resources for people to follow up and to begin to educate themselves, because as you say, you can explain it, but those of us that are naive or just getting started, these will be great assets for us. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome very much. We do believe in learning before doing.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to get that information out there to help people. So it'd be my pleasure. I will get you those links and you'll be able to add them to this.
I hope our listeners enjoyed that conversation with Dennis as much as I did. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Zapp Savvy, where our mission is to
power up your adventures and charge your life with knowledge.
And thanks again to our sponsor, SoftStart USA.
Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. I'm counting on you.
And be sure to comment what you like. Ask questions about what you want us to cover next. We love your feedback.
Thank you so much, and see you next time on
Zapp Savvy.